Ahoj! If you think that Czech language uses a lot of constructions with aby in it, you're absolutely right. In fact, I hadn't noticed how frequent aby is until two of my students pointed that out. Then I looked at it closely and put together this video. This is a brief grammar lesson. If you want more information, you can also check out my new worksheet that I created specifically for this video. You will find a lot more examples and a lot more exercises. You can also watch my video on aby-clause, where you will learn how to make this construction. In this video, we're going to take a look at sentences like these. Dělá všechno proto, aby nemusel pracovat. This is one of phrases that uses aby that might be surprising for you. You can say this about a lazy person. Dělá všechno proto, aby nemusel pracovat. Something like, he does everything he can to avoid working. There are many constructions that use aby that might not make sense in English. So in this short video, we're going to take a look at where you can come across aby constructions. And after seeing a couple of examples, you will get a better idea when to expect these clauses. Jdeme na to. Dobrý den, vítejte na mém kanále Czech by Zuzka, kde vám pomocí angličtiny vysvětluju českou gramatiku. So when Czech uses an aby clause, the first case would be after verbs such as chtít, to want, potřebovat, to need, přát si, to wish, radit, to advise, doporučit, to recommend, dovolit, to allow. All these verbs are typical when we want something from other people. So if we have a statement that has two different subjects, one subject in the first part, in the first clause, and a different subject in the second clause. In that case, we use aby in Czech. Let me demonstrate this briefly. Compare these two sentences. Chci odejít, I want to leave. It uses the verb that I put here, but it has the same subject. Chci odejít refer to já. I want to leave. Odejít is an infinitive. If there is just one subject, then we use the verb plus the infinitive. Chci odejít, I want to leave. Potřebuju odejít, I need to leave. Then we use the infinitive. However, if we modify this sentence and we say chci, abys odešel, we have two subjects here. Chci refers to já still, but odešel, abys odešel, this refers to ty. Já chci, abys ty odešel. And in English, we translate that to I want you to leave. In English, we have this specific construction. I want you to leave. In Czech, we cannot simply do with an infinitive. We use abys or aby, depending on the pronoun. I want you to leave. Chci, abys odešel. In this video, we're not going to discuss how to make this clause. You can briefly look at it here. Now take a look at this sentence. Přeju si, aby to skončilo. Or chci, aby to skončilo. There are two different subjects. Přeju si or chci, they both refer to já. Aby to skončilo, it refers to to. The subject is actually here. I want it to end. Or I wish for it to end. In Czech, we only can express it with aby. Aby could be sometimes translated as so that it would. You are saying something like, I wish so that it would end. And it would be the same case with these verbs that I wrote for you. Now let's take a look at another example. Czech language uses aby construction when we express an imperative in indirect speech or reported speech. That's another term for indirect speech. For example, řekl mi, abych přišel jindy, which means he told me to come another time. Řekl mi, abych přišel jindy. He told me to come another time. First of all, the subject is different in both clauses, and also there is past tense. Typically, we use aby if the first part is in past tense. So the direct speech would be přijď jindy. Someone tells you right now, přijď jindy, come another time. And if you tell someone, hey, he told me to come another time, it would be like this. Řekl mi, abych přišel jindy. So that's the shift. The imperative přijď changes to abych přišel in reported speech with aby. Požádal jsem všechny, aby přišli včas. I asked everyone to come on time. Požádal jsem všechny, aby přišli včas. Direct speech in the imperative would be přijďte včas. And then the indirect speech would be like this. Sorry, I'm missing an N here. Požádal jsem všechny, aby přišli včas. Notice we use a comma before aby clause. Czech language uses aby in phrases that often translate to in order to or to, and it answers the question why. Usually, each part of the sentence would have a different subject. Jsem tady, abych ti pomohl. I'm here to help you. In other words, I'm here in order to help you. I came in order to help you. Jsem tady, abych ti pomohl. We are answering the question, why am I here? To help you. Abych ti pomohl. In this sentence, although we have the same subject, já jsem tady, abych já ti pomohl. There is an object, an indirect object, ti, which would not work with the infinitive. Jsem tady pomoct ti simply doesn't work in Czech. So like I said, usually it has two different subjects. Here it doesn't, but it involves more people and the construction is a little bit more complex. It has more words. We like to use aby. It's simply more Czech to use the full verb, an aby clause. Schovala se, aby ji neviděl. She hid so that he wouldn't see her. She hid in order for him not to see her, in other words. Again, answering the question, why did she hide? So that he wouldn't see her. Schovala se, aby ji neviděl. Here we have two different subjects. Ona, on. So you can understand easily why we use aby clause here. And now the sentence I showed you at the beginning. Dělá všechno proto, aby nemusel pracovat. Remember this one? We can say this about a lazy person. He does everything he can to avoid working. Literally, it's something like he does everything so that he wouldn't have to work. In many cases, aby clause also uses proto. This is a typical construction. Proto aby. We express a purpose. Remember this combo, proto aby. And now here is the fourth category when we use aby clause. This concerns expressions with a preposition and the demonstrative pronoun to, many times in different cases. This is where it can get more confusing because when you translate it into English, it's like, okay, what's the need for aby in here? And how do you get used to this? You simply read more. You see more examples where this happens and then you start getting the idea, you start thinking more Czech. I'm just going to give you a few examples, but there will be loads more in my worksheet that you can get on Buy Me a Coffee. Stůl byl moc těžký na to, aby se dal přestěhovat. This sentence simply means the table was too heavy to move. In English, this time, it's much briefer. The table was too heavy to move. In Czech, when you think about it, you cannot say stůl byl moc těžký na přestěhovat. You could say stůl byl moc těžký na přestěhování, for moving. And that works too. However, it would be too formal. In informal language, we tend to spread the sentences a little bit more, adding more verbs to it. Stůl byl moc těžký na to, aby se dal přestěhovat. Literally, the table was too heavy for it to be possible to move it. So here we have a preposition na and then to. Next example. Místo toho, abych se učil, jsem šel spát. Instead of studying, I went to sleep. In English, this is much briefer again. In Czech, we say instead of it, so that I would study, I went to bed. A little strange. But this is another construction. Místo toho aby, místo toho abych is very typical in Czech with aby clause. Místo toho aby, and then you use a sentence with a verb. And yes, you could say místo učení jsem šel spát. It's briefer, but not so typical for spoken Czech. Czech people will more likely say something like this. So remember, místo toho aby, or abych. And now another example. Nedostala jsem se k tomu, abych ti odepsala. Nedostat se k něčemu means that you didn't get around. You didn't have the time to do something. This sentence means I haven't gotten around to replying to you. Nedostala jsem se k tomu, abych ti odepsala. Nedostala jsem se k tomu. I didn't get around to it so that I would write to you. You see, it's a little weird, a little too complicated in Czech. But for instance, this is because we say dostat se k něčemu, to get to something. So here, instead of directly saying nedostala jsem se k odepsání, which sounds a little formal, and it's also missing replying you, we cannot say k odepsání ti. That sounds really weird. We need a subordinate clause. So we do this. Nedostala jsem se k tomu, abych ti odepsala. It gets easier when you see more examples like this. You start thinking in Czech. Many times those sentences explain how things were. For example, the previous sentence, stůl byl moc těžký na to, aby se dal přestěhovat. You're describing how the table is. It's heavy. In many words you describe how heavy it is. And remember, we had construction proto aby in order to. And there is another construction that's also typical. Tak aby. For example, uměl věci vysvětlit tak, aby to pochopili všichni. This means he could explain things in a way that everybody understood. Uměl věci vysvětlit tak, aby to pochopili všichni. I think you had enough training. And now let's do an exercise. You have sentences that are partly done in Czech, and your task will be to look at the English translation and see what's missing. You have to use an aby clause. You just have to choose the correct form. Stopněte video, abyste měli dost času. Here is the perfect opportunity for aby. And let's check it. Číslo 1. Jsem moc starý na to, aby mě lidi poučovali. Jsem moc starý na to, aby. Číslo 2. Člověk není na světě jenom proto, aby pracoval. Proto, aby pracoval. Číslo 3. Konečně jsem se dostal k tomu, abych ti napsal. K tomu, abych ti napsal. Číslo 4. To mě donutilo k tomu, abych vstal. Číslo 5. Místo toho, aby ho pozdravila, tak utekla. A číslo 6. Budu sdílet obrazovku, abys to viděl. Alright, that's all. This is a complex topic, so if you are interested in more constructions, check out the worksheet, and I'll see you next week with another brief video. Mějte se!